Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Living the Sweet Life. I'm your host, TJ Sweet, and on this podcast, we are committed to helping you go from where you are to where you want to be. We're going to help you do that by helping you reshape your mindset, live with intention, and learn how to look at the world through a grateful lens. Now, if you're a consistent listener and watcher, well, maybe more watcher for right now, you kind of see that things look a little different here. We are committed to finding more ways to add more value to each of you for every episode. And this is going to be big. This is for you. We are going to start bringing in fantastic people around the world for this podcast for you. The content and the feel is probably going to be similar for you, but the amount of information, the depth of information, the perspectives you're going to gain is going to be better and more improved because we're going to bring in great people to have conversations so we can learn not just how I think about things and in my personal experiences, but also great, creative, successful, value-adding people from across the world. We're going to do that for you. If you haven't hit subscribe, go ahead and do that now so that you get notifications every Monday. As you know, we call it Mindset Monday, but we want to make sure that you get these notifications so that you get, one, reminders that you're constantly learning and growing, but also that there's always something new to learn, but we all need reminders to take care of ourselves and our lives. So hit that subscribe button now if you haven't already. Now for this first episode, we're going to bring in the guy who's responsible for everything behind the camera. We're going to bring him in front of the camera. We're bringing in our first guest with this new way of adding more value. Is Brian Sweno. Sweno Visuals, Sweno Creative. He does a bunch of different things. I'll let him dive into that a little bit more, but we're going to talk a lot about that internal narrative. Maybe it's that internal critic, but that story that we tell ourselves in our personal lives and our career. We're going to dive into that. So let's get right into it with Brian. Brian, first of all, I want to say thank you for everything you do behind the camera, but also being willing to join me in front of it now. I appreciate you being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's like we talked earlier, stressing me out a little bit because I don't know what's going on behind the camera right now. I got to be over here. So if I wasn't bald, I would currently be losing my hair. I might be turning gray. If you see me turn gray throughout this episode, you know why. Couldn't have someone better to do it with, though.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate being vulnerable enough and willing to take a risk. And I'm super excited to talk about this topic with you because, you know, we have a lot of our side conversations. When we meet up to record episodes, we record 3 or 4 episodes, but we actually talk for hours.
Right.
Just because we kind of go back and forth and we both have different perspectives, but we also have a mutual respect for where the other person's coming from. And I learned as much from you as I hope I add some value to you as well. And obviously you have to listen to these every right. time. So you kind of get the full dose of it. And all the editing is done by you and your team. So you have to listen to it multiple times. So.
It's like a personal therapy session every time I get to record an episode, but then also edit the episode and listen to it multiple times. I've gained a lot of perspective, and I tell TJ this all the time, but like I legitimately listen to the podcast as a listener also after the fact. Like I go on runs and I'll put on your podcast, just soak it all in from a non-creative perspective of maybe I did this or didn't do that. That's where the inner critic for me comes out of watching something I did. I'm always like, what could I have done better? That's my inner critic is what could I have done better in every scenario, whether that's with creative stuff or not. So I try to, as much as I can with stuff like that, just take a step back and view it as a viewer, listen to it as a listener. And that's why it's beneficial for me whenever I run because I'm focused on running. So I just got to listen, I'm not worried about what it looks like if I'm only hearing it. So
yeah.
I would love everyone to watch this on YouTube,
just
to see what the hard work we put into this and making it look good and stuff. But if you just listen, sometimes that's better.
Yeah, and obviously we know people have different learning styles and attention spans, and I know a lot of the listeners talk to me about listening while they ride in their car, right? And we kind of, if you think about the thinking that we do, is often dictated by the environment we're in. And so a lot of people say, I do my best thinking while I'm running. I do my best thinking in the car. I do my best thinking in the shower.
Right.
And the super simple science behind that is because we can't be doing anything else than the thing we're doing.
Right.
Like we're actually not believing that we're multitaskers in the moment. Where in our real lives, we think we're multitaskers, but we're actually just single taskers. We've talked about this on this podcast. We're just single tasking a bunch of things sequentially and quickly. But when you're in the shower, you're on the run, you're just running. You're just in the car. Now, obviously, I want people, if they are driving, to pay attention to driving, but also
if you are driving, just listen.
Right.
Just listen.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. But it's really it's however you best receive information, and that's one of the things I hear a lot about with podcasts too, is people say, I just can't listen, or they don't apply anything that they listen to. So that's why this episode really for us is going to be great, because truthfully, Brian already he already has a great narrative that he tells himself. And, there are times to talk about the inner critic and some of the negative things happening in our lives, but there's also a lot of times where we can learn from people who don't have that, and so I'm super excited for the audience to be able to hear that from you, because I believe it from you based on all the work you do too. So tell me a little bit about whenever you have a new project that maybe you've never done before, right? Before you started podcasts, before you started some of the big, also I want you to kind of dive into what you do and the services you provide, but tell me about whenever you take on that big project that you've never done before, what is some of the thought process that you go through to then show up with confidence?
So confidence didn't come natural for me. Like whenever I was a little kid, I was the super shy kid who was over in the corner. Family functions, I was over there, wouldn't talk to my own family. I had one little cousin I played with. And I remember vividly, like one time we were going to stay at each other's houses or something. And I was so scared to go talk to my own aunt and ask if I could stay the night at their house, or if he could come stay the night at our house. And like, I started playing guitar at 8 years old. That's where sort of the confidence switch flipped for me. Was I got into something that I really, really loved to do. And then I really leaned into it, and I just practiced and practiced and practiced. And I think that sticks with me today. I'm 33 years old now. I was 8 years old then. I went from being super shy and wouldn't talk to people to, I'm pretty good at this music thing, and I practiced a ton. I put a lot into it, and then I could show that off and show like, hey, here's what I did, and be proud of it. And so I think a lot of the confidence I have today stems from that back then, of recognizing I could invest my time and energy into a skill, and then I could be rewarded with my own personal achievements and confidence from that, and then be able to show that off also, which is a good process I like. So that's how I got into cameras also.
Okay.
Was I wanted to make YouTube videos. Whenever YouTube first blew up, it was the 2010-ish, 2008. I had played guitar for 10-ish years at that point, and I wanted to make YouTube videos of me playing guitar. And then I got a little camera, tiny point and shoot camera that would fit in your pocket. I got more invested in what it looked like than what the music was like. And then I realized I could make a career out of this. I just keep leveling up the way it looks. People will pay for that. And in Lebanon, Missouri, you're not getting paid to play heavy metal music. So that's what I was doing back then. Yeah. So that's sort of where it all stair-stepped from. There's a long, gigantic story with that, which we can get into that some other time, or I told it on my podcast if anyone wants to go check that out. That's where it all got started for me. The confidence came from music and being able to perform in front of people, and then I got used to talking to people after the show, and then they would come up to me and say, oh, that was really cool, or whatever. And then I put myself in those scenarios over and over and over again to where the uncomfortable started to feel comfortable. And I know you talk about that a lot on the podcast of, if you never put yourself in the uncomfortable spot, then you never have the chance. You're never giving yourself the chance to get comfortable in those positions. So I offer, with my business, I do podcast production. That's the thing that anyone here would recognize. But I also do like commercial film work. I've been on a couple of TV show productions and stuff like that. We shot this docuseries last year that's potentially going to go like on Netflix and stuff this coming year. So been a part of a lot of really cool things, and trying to scale my business itself up to do those really cool things. Stepping into those scenarios happens all the time for me. And the way that I navigate that is seeing it as a challenge, rather than being like, oh, I've never done this before. I'm like, oh, I've never got to do this before, you know? And you know me well enough to, like, I'm still the guy at 33 years old that stays up late at night watching YouTube videos of how to do this better. Every single night, if I'm not editing and I'm working on this, then I'm working on myself on this. So that's how I approach those scenarios of, I've ran this scenario in my head 7 million times of every possible way to go about it. I've learned as much as I possibly can, and I know that. So then me approaching it as, I know I'm a good person, I'm a good human being, and I'm going to approach working as a team like that. And then my skill set, I'm confident in what I know, what I don't know, and I'm confident that I'm not going to put myself in a scenario to do something that I know I can't do. So I just approach it as a challenge, which is probably a super long-winded answer for what you wanted, but approaching it as a challenge rather than a threat, kind of, you know.
Yeah, well, and you touched on quite a few different things that I kind of want to poke at a little bit, if you don't mind. So obviously one of the things about the internal story that we have goes back, and we last couple episodes we've talked about the inner child. And so when I asked you where your confidence came from, you didn't start with the work that you're doing at night. You started with when you didn't have confidence and how you gained it as a child.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is more your desire and commitment to do the work is what makes you confident, not that you've already done the work in the past. A lot of people find confidence after they've had the outcome.
Yeah.
And that's why people don't have confidence, because they don't start, right? That's actually the perfect place and perfect environment to start is when you don't have the confidence is to get going, right? And a quote about you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great.
Right.
But that's kind of what you just articulated is no matter what the project, it's not that you've done it before. That's not where your confidence is rooted. Your confidence is rooted in your desire and willingness and ability to learn, grow, be humble, lean on others, be resourceful. And that's such a healthy way to go through life, whether it's in your relationship or in your career, really understanding it actually comes from your ability to learn and grow. But it starts with things that you learned as a kid. And, you know, when you just talk about inner critic, for example, if that's a story that a lot of people tell themselves, as we know, it really starts with somebody who gave us feedback when we were a kid that we really took to heart. Somebody that we loved, somebody that we trusted, somebody that we valued came down on us a lot. So then we associated love as that. So when we talk about self-love, sometimes people misinterpret what I mean by that. They mean holding themselves super accountable.
Right.
Because that's what love came across to them. And I know that's a little different weave, right?
Right.
So how does that kind of resonate with you as far as people that gave you feedback as a kid and kind of how you feel like that shaped you as far as your confidence in that story you tell yourself about yourself?
Well, growing up, not to get too into it, but I have an alcoholic father. So that's played a factor my whole life. That's played a factor still currently. And there's a quote that my dad always used to say, like, no matter what the situation was, the one really, really big takeaway that I always took away from him was that he always would tell me, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. And so, like, that's literally how I approach my life. Whether I have a good or, you know, little rocky relationship with my dad still currently, and that's always just played a factor. That's one of the things that has always stuck out to me. And I know that he's approaching that from a place of love, of wanting his kids to do better than he might be doing, you know? And so that's one of those, I've heard that literally since I can remember. He would tell us, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. So whenever I was growing up, I did track. Track was my thing. Broke a bunch of records, got a bunch of medals. That's what would go through my head. I can do anything if I put my mind to it. But you have to put your mind to it to be able to do the thing. So, and that's how I approach still today. Like whenever I'm in that scenario where I show up to a commercial production and I've never done it before. I'm, you know, going to Arizona, totally different state. I'm halfway across the country and I'm there helping head up a production, and I'm like, I've never done this before, but I can do anything if I put my mind to it. So I approach it like that rather than I don't know what to do, you know? I'm confident in all those hours that I stay up at night and all those hours that I've done this. And, you know, the 10,000 hour thing, you know, to be a
To be an expert.
That passed a long time ago for me. So I've got 10,000 hours just watching YouTube, I'm sure. So
yeah,
let alone doing the actual thing itself. So I rely on the work that I put in, and I'm confident in the work that I put in. So
yeah, and I admire that about you, honestly, because it's a tough thing to overcome, but it's one of those things if you can recognize it. And one of the great ways that I like to think about this inner critic is if there's anybody out there really listening, because truthfully, I've learned to recognize, embrace, and pay attention to my inner critic, but not live in that space, right? So you kind of think about there's different aspects, and I was at a great retreat the other day, and there's different aspects of our headspace, right? There's that critic, the dreamer, the hoper, the futuristic. There's just different aspects of it, and you kind of think about sitting in a room full of people with all the different mindsets, right? And so kind of being playful enough to listen to each of them, but don't let that critic be the loudest voice all the time.
Right.
Now, do we need to hold ourselves accountable and that critic's valuable? Absolutely. So we don't want to squash it all together. But really kind of what I've recognized is, and a great way to think about it is name it and tame it. So whenever you're beating yourself up or it's not good enough or your stress of being in front of the camera instead of back there, right? It's a matter of just name the thing.
Right.
Be vulnerable enough to name it and say, it's really just my desire to be in control. And then how do you tame it? But if you never name it, it's wild. And so just thinking about for that inner critic, and because there's some people, I know you talked about your dad in that regards as far as kind of like that bit of advice, but there's a lot of people that I work with and that I talk to, super successful people that are still trying to heal that inner story. They don't have that one bit of advice that's been driving them, and maybe it's earning approval from that person that you never could make proud, or always feeling like you're not enough because the people that you loved and trusted as a kid, or even as an adult, made you feel like you weren't enough no matter what.
Right.
And a great story that I've shared with you too. So Kobe Bryant's dad, because he came out of high school, went to France, and he was talking about how the one thing that changed forever for him was when his dad said, "Go do your best. I'm going to love you whether you win or you lose." And he said that set him free. Instead of trying to earn the love, he knew the love was unconditional in a way that related to him. So when I talk about that internal dialogue, it is, you got to start figuring out where that came from.
Yeah.
Is it real or was it real? Is it who you are versus who you want to be?
Right.
And that's why we talk about where you are versus where you want to be so much, because there's so many people that know that they want to do more and they're built for more. But sometimes that inner critic is just too loud. And that inner dreamer and the inner challenger and the inner believer doesn't get a chance. But if you start naming it, you can tame that critic, and then you'll be set free.
Right. There's a lot of people, like whenever I made the decision that I was going to quit my full-time job to pursue this full-time, and there was a lot of people that their self-critic came out towards me, and they're like, well, you better have a backup option. All the things that come out, but I recognize like that's them talking to themselves to me, I was full on in, so I was also confident then that I had put in the work on the weekends to be able to, I had matched my salary from my full-time job on the weekends. And so to me, it was a no-brainer of, if I'm ever going to bet on anything, it's myself. And so in this scenario, I know my work ethic, and I know I'm not going to just not take on jobs, So if anything, I have the opposite problem of sometimes I need to reel myself in, which is a whole different episode. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But you've seen that from me. Just in I work myself to a detriment sometimes. And that's something that I've had to become self-aware of recently and start expanding my team and recognize that I actually need help. And so mine almost swings in the opposite direction of self-critic. It's like I have to figure out how to know that I need help, like acknowledge when I need help and put faith in other people, which is something I also struggle with. I know I can do it, but it might take away from 15 other things for doing this one thing, but I'll still do the one thing to prove to myself that I can do the one thing. So that's like the opposite of the self-critic, but I don't even know what term describes that, but it's I don't know, admitting that you need help sometimes is super hard for me.
Yeah.
Even though I know that it would benefit me. It's like I want to prove it to myself that I can do it anyway. And so this year I've expanded the team. I have someone, Bethany, helping me with the business. I have Naaman coming on. He's almost full-time as of the 1st. He'll be here full-time too. So within, 6 months, I'll go from 0 help to 2 full-time employees. And it's just crazy the doors that open whenever you have faith in other people and you put yourself and your confidence forward. And there's a big difference between confidence and like cockiness. Like, that's where the line sometimes can get blurry of the opposite direction of the inner critic. You squash it too much. I don't do that. I know I have an inner critic and I know that it's harsh on me and I'm harsh on my own work and I'm harsh on myself. But in my head, I'm like, if I can do that, that helps me level up what I can do. And then that gets me in those rooms to be on the commercial productions and stuff. So I try to have a healthy balance of the inner critic for me is like, oh, you could have moved that light 2 inches to the left. You could have, that's my inner critic is the details. So I have to rein that in sometimes too and be like, it's good enough, what is good enough. And I ride that line a lot and it's helped me elevate what I do, but it's also kept me from like YouTube stuff. Like we talked about that last time you were here. I really want to start a YouTube channel. I think I can help other people in a big way by doing that. But my inner critic wants everything to be perfect to be able to put it out. But at some point you just got to put it out, do the thing, to get the confidence in the thing, like you just said. So
yeah. Can I ask you? I want to kind of maybe more bring up a point more than anything. So the difference between confidence and arrogance, truthfully, is self-belief. Arrogance is typically a sign of lack of confidence, because when it's like that loud arrogance, you're hoping other people affirm how confident you are.
Yeah.
And it's actually, you're needing more affirmation. So those people that are just obnoxiously arrogant, they're actually the ones who are needing the most reassurance.
Right.
They just don't know it. So I don't even really pay much attention to it, you know? And then the second thing I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit when you talked about help. I'm not saying this relates to you, but I've seen it relate a lot to people. So I typically think about like a reframe and a different look at a perspective. But oftentimes people who never want help learned to not ask for help, because in the past they did ask for help and nobody showed up. And I'm not saying that's you, but I'm just saying there's a lot of times that people needed it, tried to get it, but nobody was looking around. And the only person who was there to actually help them was the person looking them in the mirror. So they're more comfortable with that.
Right.
It gets masked as I know what I want. I do it the best. I take pride in it. I'm responsible for it. That's what it sounds like. But it's also kind of why do I never want help?
Right.
And so much of it is often, I'm not an always never guy. A lot of it can be rooted in, I needed help and nobody was there.
Right.
So now I don't really know how to ask for it with confidence that I actually think somebody's going to be there. Or maybe you asked for help and somebody took advantage of it.
Right.
And so.
Yeah. I can see those. I'm running scenarios in my head. I don't think that that's where mine comes from. Mine, I think, comes more from like, I know that I've put in the work to know what to do. Yeah. And I'm not confident that someone else has put in that same work or cares enough about my business that they would put as much into it as I would. And that's where you don't have to have that. I don't have to have another me, to do that. And that's where I've had to come to that realization. Like, just because it isn't me doesn't mean it's not even better. Like having Bethany, she's been an office manager for 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm 33 years old. So like, she's over half my life. She's been doing what I need help with.
And
she's better at it than I am.
She's great. Yeah.
But I'm like, I could do this, But me doing it has been limiting the things that I am best at. And that's where I've come to that realization of freeing up that part that she's actually better than me at, not only do I not have to prove to myself anymore that I can do it, I've done it for 9 years. I know that I can do it. So I'm now confident that I can do that and pass it off to someone who can do it better. And then that makes every other part of my business more efficient because I can put more time and more energy that I would have spent over here into this and do what I am the best at more. So I don't know if it's like I've ever been let down. I'm sure that has happened. I think that happens to pretty much everybody.
Yep.
But we talk a lot about being like self-aware, you know?
Right.
And I've put a lot of work into that. And that's one thing, if anyone takes anything out of this episode from me specifically, it is to be self-aware and like actually self-aware. And if you're self-aware, then you know your tendencies. You know if you're in this scenario with this person, you might get a little triggered or you know, to then not put yourself in that scenario in the first place. Those sorts of situations, like you only know that if you're self-aware and honest with yourself enough to know all of those things. And that's where I've done a lot of work over the last few years to put a lot into that, like the family aspect, and which I still struggle with, balancing family and work, but I'm always getting better at it, you know? So those are the sorts of things where if I never paid attention, if I was never self-aware enough to know that, then I would just be off in oblivion and there would be never any balance whatsoever. There would be no, because I swing in the I'll work until I'm dead, you know, part. So I know that. Now I got to consciously swing it the other direction. So you just got to be self-aware. Like the inner critic, that it ties into that, the self-talk. If you got to be self-aware of how you talk to yourself. Like there's only one person that you're stuck with your whole life, and that's yourself, you know?
Sure.
So being able to be friendly to yourself is the biggest thing ever. Not be too harsh on yourself, but know to be harsh on yourself sometimes. You know, that is valuable. And I think that sort of ties in with the whole episode here of like just, you got to know who you are at the core, and then you know whether your self-critic is being too harsh on you. And, you know, I heard this quote from another podcast. I can't remember which one it was, but they said, look at how you talk to yourself and then look at how you talk to your friends. And if those two don't match up, then you need to start talking to yourself more like you would talk to your friends. And that was like a revelation to me a couple of years ago. And I've been trying to work on that of, not that I want to coddle myself, you know, and be like, oh, you're so great at everything. That's not what I try to do at all. But, you know, just being confident in that and knowing that whenever I have those maybe doubts, or if that ever pops up in my life, I'm like, but I have all these small wins leading up to this, and I lean on all those small wins to go get the big win, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that too. I mean, that self-awareness piece, when we talk about the inner story, the vulnerability that it takes, and so real relationships, and you know, you and I kind of clicked from our first phone call, right? And so, but real relationships really grow when you're not trying to protect or hide yourself, but when you actually allow yourself to be seen. Like when you are in a safe, psychologically safe relationship, friendship, whatever the thing is, business, working relationship as well, when you can actually just be seen, you are more of than your actual authentic self, but we don't even see ourselves, our current self, right? We just keep trying to fight against previous versions or even future versions that we want. And so that self-awareness piece is so critical when it comes to that inner story, the inner words that we use. If you wake up every day with, you know, beating yourself up, but then you cheer your friends on, just knowing that the cheer is inside of you. You just have to learn to look at yourself a little differently. Then you'll naturally start using some different words. But we all want to be seen, but we don't show ourselves authentically to other people. So then we show other people what we want them to see, but then we never feel seen because we're showing them something that's not authentically us.
Right.
Which sounds like, just even your smirk is like, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But that's what a lot of people do, is like, I don't want Brian to know that I, you know, about certain episodes and certain strategies. And, you know, I want to tell Brian that we're taking off and we have 1 million subscribers. And
right.
but it's like he knows I'm in a process of growth.
Yeah.
We both are. But when you show up authentically and you show up as just like, here's who I am, the other person will naturally feel like, okay, it's a space of just being, not proving.
Right. Well, one scenario with that is that the first time we talked, like you said, we had like a connection. I knew you were authentically trying to help people with this. But in that first conversation, how I approached that, like you asked me at the beginning of this, how do I approach scenarios I've never been in? You know, firsthand I said, hey, I just want to be totally honest. I've never done this before, but I'm confident that we can pull it off. I'm down to try it. Worst case scenario is we record an episode and it tanks and it's not good and we delete it. So, you know, you took a chance on me and I took a chance on you. And then we both have been able to elevate. I've been able to take on 4 more weekly podcast productions because of taking the chance on putting the confidence forward and leaning on that. So that's just a case between me and you that, like, I had never done it before. So, but I'm confident in all the other skills. I know how to operate cameras. I know how to do lighting, all those things, know how to do audio. Why can I not put all that stuff together and do a podcast production, you know? So that's a real world, real life example between me and you of that happening. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking a chance on me and putting one message out on Facebook. Does anybody know anybody who does videography? So I was actually just wanting somebody to go follow me around while I do keynote speaking. And then Brian and I started talking and like, what else do you do? And he did the work, right? He looked me up and, you know, we saw that the way I was recording podcasts before, pretty organic.
Right.
His exact words were, dude in his room recording a podcast, which I would hope it came across as a little different than that. But a lot of people then were just listening because I wasn't putting it on YouTube as well. But
that right there is another thing, you know, of I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm a little bit truthful sometimes, you know, like in that scenario, I could have easily been like, you're doing great, you know, Jeremy, all the things. But what I did was I'd be like, your message is great, but we could make it so much better.
Sure.
Because I'm confident. I was confident, not trying to sell you on something. You weren't going to pay me any more to do what, you know. So I genuinely wanted to help you. I see you're trying to help other people, and I want to help people that are helping other people. That it's a cool opportunity, but also like it just helping other people, genuinely helping other people is something that drives me. So,
yeah. Well, and again, when you create a psychologically safe space, when somebody says, do you want to up your game from a guy in his bedroom to a studio? I heard that as support and encouragement and belief. But if you're not in a psychologically safe, and if you don't know yourself well enough, and if you don't show yourself to that other person, that's going to come across as them being critical and degrading.
Right.
So the same feedback can be interpreted totally differently. But that is because I come out and say, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm expanding, here's the vision, which then lays the framework for you to say, if that's really who you are and what you want to do and why you want to do it, here's something that goes along with that. So I was already in the mental state of sharing where I authentically was, where I know I want it to be, where I know we can make it go. And then that felt completely normal in our first phone call. To then say, you're doing this, it could be that. But there has to be that sense of self-awareness and that humility of like, I'm just in it to grow and get better.
Right.
This is like our 4th setup, 5th iteration.
Right.
And it's not that we're trying things, but we're just constantly working on getting it better. And it's for all of you. And whenever Brian and I were talking, we're like, how do we keep adding more value? But we also look at who's adding the most value. Not trying to be them, not trying to be like them. But if you all get a lot of value from other people, doing it in different ways, I know you can learn a lot from Brian. I learn a lot from Brian. And we've said this probably 10 different times. We should just sit down and record the stuff we just jam about. This is what it sounds like all the time. So to Brian's wife, like this is what it sounds like most of the time. I do talk for 15 minutes on into that camera on a pretty routine basis, but this is basically what we're doing is iron sharpening iron.
Right.
With the intent of sharpening iron, not trying to prove something, but only just because I believe in him. I believe in you. I believe in everything that you're doing and who you are. I have nudged towards the balance and make sure that I'm not going against that. You know, I mean, here we are in a time where you could be with your family, but you're choosing to be here. So I take that very seriously. The prep that goes into these, the effort into telling people about you, like all of that is really rooted in who you are as a person, not just what you do for me, but who you all, also show up for your family, because that means a lot, because I know we do need people in our lives that see us, that know us, that do hold us accountable, but also cheer us on, but also are willing to be truthful and saying, you said you wanted this. You said you wanted all the success and all the things, but don't lose sight of the family, right? And you and I had a conversation about that too, and not that Brian needed it, but I would just kind of like, get your team, get your people, show up for your family more, because I know how much his family means to him.
Yeah.
They always do. And just even when you just talked about working hard and working a lot, I know well enough it wasn't because you were just so geeked up and excited about working more. It was the sacrifice that you made.
Yeah. Everything I do is for them.
Correct.
But I've had to take a step back and be like, if I do everything and I'm always off doing everything, then I'm not there with them, to enjoy them. Like, we got 3 little kids. Well, let's say little, like they're gigantic kids now. And I don't want to be the dad that missed out on all the things for them. So I intentionally set aside time, and we'll go to trip. Like yesterday, we went to the lake. We had a whole day. We went to ice cream place. We did all the things. So I've been trying to intentionally set aside time that is like dedicated. Nothing else matters. There's no work. I'm not doing anything else, because I spend a lot of my time here, and a lot of my time is editing, staring at a computer screen. Even if I'm at home, a lot of time I'm at our kitchen table editing. But I have a rule, kind of like unwritten rule in my head, that if my son comes up to me and asks me to play, I will never say no. And I will at least take a little time to go play with him a little bit. I'd never, ever want them to feel like my work is more important than my family, or my work is more important than my kid. I don't ever want them to feel that way. I'm like borderline emotional. But for instance, my dad, he chose and is still choosing to this day alcohol over his family. And I don't want that same scenario to play out where I'm choosing work over my family, and I would give up everything to just have my family. So work is important to me. It is one of the most important things to me, but family is always more than that. And I want them to know it and feel it. I don't want them to just hear me say, I love you at night. I want them to feel that what I'm doing is for them. And if that ever becomes out of balance, them knowing that I love them more, then everything will shut down. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, that's an important thing too, to also reflect on, and the emotional piece is just the love that you have for them. It's not shame and regret. I know you well enough to know that, but it's also really important, right? They're going to hear this. If they watch this episode at some point in their life, we keep it clean always, right? Because we want everybody to feel like they can listen to this and they can put it on at a school. I have people tell me they put it on in their office, which is the most humbling, it's just out of body experience to hear the people just put it on Monday mornings.
Right. Well, you do have a pretty sultry voice, so I can't blame them. It's like
I promise it's like my real voice.
Bob Ross over here of personal development. So
yeah. Well, and honestly, that's the thing too, that we do need people, because I know how much they mean to you, but we do need people in our lives that kind of nudge us and remind us of that,
which I appreciate from you.
Yeah, and I have people in my life too that do the same thing, and you've challenged me in a lot of healthy ways. You've kind of challenged my own inner story and my own, what's possible, and we aren't just amplifiers. We're actual, kind of really look at it as it is, and let's stay consistent with it. And there's times where even, Brian said that it didn't turn out how I want, and your name's on all these too, and that matters a lot. So. But also my name's on it, so it matters more to you. And so whenever you can work with people and have people in your life that want you to grow, and like we've talked about, Brian and I want everybody to grow and succeed. Yeah, we want everybody to 10x wherever they are, be more successful than us. Like, we're not trying to take anything from anybody. We're just trying to add as much as we can. Yeah. And that has truthfully is a result of both of us kind of doing some of that internal work to feel like one, we have the confidence to keep going and pushing, but also we have enough to find the state of happiness, like not putting the I'll be happy when. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm choosing happy now, and fulfillment is continuing to come. Like some of the greatest things are still yet to come. But man, all the great things we already have.
Right.
That allows us to be freed up to then go create, to change the way we do this podcast, right? There has to be enough certainty in the message, in the heart of it, to change it up like we've changed it up. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you coming on this side of the camera. Brian is we have more topics to talk about. Well, you'll probably see some B-roll kind of looking stuff where we just talk about whatever, and you're going to get some of the best unfiltered, unscripted. And as you can see, both of us, this is from our hearts. There's no notes. We didn't sit down and write a script. We're just talking.
We literally, before this, we're like, how are we going to do this? I'm like, let's just have a conversation.
Yeah,
you know?
Let's just do it. Because truthfully, you all deserve that. And I appreciate every conversation I have with you, and whether it's in front of the camera or behind it. Yeah. So
we'll do more on camera now.
Yeah, we definitely will.
Let us know if you like it. Let TJ know. Comment. You can comment across every single platform now, even on Spotify and iTunes. You can comment on podcasts. Let us know if you like this and want to see more of this. It's not always going to be me as the guest with him. Mm-hmm. We're going to bring in a whole bunch of other people. A lot of awesome people too. So a lot of awesome people doing a lot of really awesome things. So I'm excited to see that as a viewer of you being in that realm. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We have some great people coming who are going to teach me live, and we're going to keep, there's so much to learn, and the thing about every podcast, truthfully, is the timing matters. But if you go back and listen to a podcast that we put out a year ago, you're a new person, and you may hear a totally different message. Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about documenting these on all these ways that we're doing it, is people can go back and look and listen. And I can see other people, there are people who are listening to episodes from all over the place, but that's my only nudge for you. Like, one of the purpose-driven episodes, like How to Live a Purpose-Driven Life, was one of the most popular episodes, and that was 18 months ago.
Right.
So people go back and listen to that. And Sarah J. Ross, she's a friend of mine. She's a just phenomenal speaker. And we recorded a podcast together a long time ago. That's one of the most viewed. Mm-hmm. She's brilliant. And that my goal is to try to bring more people like you that are doing great things. That how can I help you do what you love to do? Because the people out there in the world need more of you and what you do. Right. So I appreciate you taking time to do this.
Of course.
So
thank you.
All right, everybody. So I appreciate the time, the effort, and the commitment that you make to these episodes. And, I hope this new format makes you stop and think a little bit more. Hopefully we gave you a bunch of different ways to think about your own internal dialogue. Maybe it's your inner critic. And we're going to talk a little bit more in some future episodes about maybe the story you tell yourself. It's kind of integrated into what we said, but we're going to talk a little bit more with intention about how that looks and how it actually plays a role in your life and the choices that you make. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button now so you get notifications when these episodes are still coming out on Monday. It's still called Mindset Monday. We'll be here creating more and new things for you on a weekly basis. And I'll remind you, like I do on every episode, that you always have the power and the choice to reshape your mindset, live with intention, and look at the world through a grateful lens. Until the next episode, never stop.